Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Ulysses Town Board. It is April 23rd, 2024, and I'll call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. May we please have a roll call?
Sure. Ms. Bouchard.
Present.
Mr. Goldman.
Present.
Ms. Olson.
Present.
Weatherby. Present. Mr. Boggs.
Present.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We have an agenda that was prepared and presented and posted last Friday. Does anyone on the board have any alterations, additions, changes they'd like to make?
I'd like to add something, I guess it would be new business, oh, there's no new business. Just a request from Daniel Woodring is the guy who's trying to get a skate park going. He approached the village about having a little small, you know, like a couple of ramps kind of thing at the farmer's market. And I don't know if he has to have insurance or something.
I would assume the village would want insurance.
And the village said, well, maybe you can get it through the recreation program in the town. Because the village doesn't have any recreation program. So I don't know if that's a worthy discussion or just a yes, no kind of thing. But
That is, I can tell you right now, I imagine it would certainly not be covered currently. So it would have to be in addition to our insurance policy of some kind. But that kind of coverage is not.
is there is there coverage for the recreation program? In particular, like separately
Yes.
identified in the.
Our insurance expert is in the room, so I just looking over here.
Yes. So
Okay.
we have, we have recreation programs and then we have the accident insurance as well. So we have to report out, I mean, they want like participation numbers and duration, how many times they meet. They get really specific about what our coverage is for. But I actually missed the first part of what you said.
Oh, so Daniel Woodring is this guy who's trying to get a skate park going. And you know, he's been at grassroots with his ramps and stuff. And he's gonna put him in the parking lot, you know, by the pump house over by the market at farmer's market. And I'm not sure. I'm not real clear on if he is a requirement by the farmer's market that he have some kind of insurance coverage.
I think it'd be pretty odd to cover something like that that isn't on the town property, is my first gut instinct on that. If it was a program, then that's one thing, but if it's just
A one-off kind of.
one-off, or if it's like, oh, it's a one-off thing,
Yeah, it wouldn't be all the time. It would be like one farmer's,
gotcha.
So it'd be like an event insurance.
I guess.
But we can
I think
certainly,
we would. Yeah, we can have it up.
Ask for a quote.
But I would say just send me all the details you
Okay.
have, like who owns the property that it's gonna be in.
Well, it's village property, but they
Yes.
said they don't have any recreation insurance.
But if it's an event
Because it's all in with the town now.
Right, right.
I'm feeling very much like this buck is getting passed.
Oh, I think we've covered it.
Motion
We
to
can-
approve as presented.
We can bring it back to the board and at least share what we find or share it over
Okay.
email. And if you want to bring it as an board agenda item, we can do that in May.
And I'll second the agenda. There I am going to be going out of town for 2 weeks, so if you can send it
At the end of this month.
at
The end of-
starting this week, so if you
Oh,
can send
okay.
it. So it'll be a gap unless somebody else wants to pick it up. As far as
Well, I don't think he's gonna do it before, June. So.
Okay. So I'm sorry, did we have a motion to approve the agenda? We did, and Liz seconded it. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, that brings us to privilege of the floor. Where the board is happy to hear from members of the public. I go back and forth in person and then online. And everyone is entitled, each person is entitled to 3 minutes, and my timer will go off. So is there anybody in person who wishes to address the board? Okay. Is there anybody online who wishes to address the board? Okay, well, in that case, final call, anyone? Okay, then we will move on. There's another privilege of the floor at the end of the meeting. That brings us to very delightfully welcoming Becky Sims from RCAP Solutions today. Thank you so much for being here. Would you like to come up to the table with me? So everybody can see you and we can get you good microphoning, which is not a word, but it should be.
Thank you. How do I make this so it's, I'm not looking at it like a slideshow. The little, slideshow button down near the Zoom slider at the bottom there. The one all the way on the right. Oh, no,
Go to the left.
on the other side of the Zoom slider. The little icon that looks like the
Oh, right.
screen. There you go. Yep.
No, pull it over for you so you're actually don't get stuck on the corner.
Hopefully that'll also show.
Please go ahead.
All right. Great. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Becky Sims. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I'm a community specialist with RCAP Solutions. RCAP Solutions is a nonprofit organization. We provide technical assistance to small rural communities related to water and wastewater infrastructure issues. And I have been working with the town since I think about the middle of last year, and with the Water Source Protection Committee primarily on a drinking water survey. And this survey has resulted in a lot of really great information that hopefully the town will be able to put to use for the drinking water source protection plan and other purposes here moving forward. So I sent the report out to you just earlier today, and I hope that can be shared with the rest of the board as needed. I did bring one printed copy if you'd like to take a look at it. I can also leave that here. And can we get started here? So I'm just going to present some of the highlights here this evening. So a little bit of background about the survey. As I mentioned, the purpose of the survey is to collect information that the town can use to inform planning, specifically the Drinking Water Source Protection Plan, the comprehensive plan, as well as decisions related to water infrastructure, of course, because the survey is focusing on drinking water. The way that this was done is that the Water Source Protection Plan Committee had worked on developing a set of surveys questions, and there were 28 questions total on the survey. It was hosted online, but we did have a paper copy. About 16 folks filled those out here at the town hall. And then the postcard with a QR code and a link to the survey was mailed to all of the residential property owners in the town outside of the village. And so that was 1,334 people. And the survey was open for about 12 weeks, end of October through about the middle of January. Go to the next slide. Oh, and I also wanted to mention there was a survey that was done in 2009, right, by the town. And so a lot of those questions did correspond directly to that past survey. So this map shows the responding households to the survey. I think it is well distributed across the town, especially in relation to where people actually live. So we got responses from 348 households. That represents a response rate of 26%. So that is, of course, who these results are going to be representing. It's not intended to represent the entire town, although I think it is worth pointing out that the average household size that was reported through the survey respondents was 2.3 people. The latest census estimates for the town are a household size of 2.1. So we're not totally far off here, at least for that metric. You can go to the next one. So I'm going to go through just really highlights of the results here. And then the rest of the results can be viewed in the hard copy report. So when it comes to water source, residents do primarily rely on well water for drinking and household water supply. About 25% of folks use bottled water for at least one source of their drinking water. You'll note that more folks are relying on wells for household water than drinking water, and I do think that's because people are, if they're supplementing a water source, it's typically their drinking water that you're supplementing and not household water for like bathing and cooking. Next, please. So when it comes to those wells that folks have, there are a lot of unknowns, and this is, I would say, unfortunately somewhat common across the state because well records weren't actually started to be recorded and saved by the state till the year 2000. Yeah, it's
That's
I
kind of
think
terrifying.
shockingly recent. Be that as it may, people do have, there are some records, right? But about half of folks said they didn't know, said unknown when it comes to depth of well as the year of construction. And so this, I think, really goes to highlight some of the challenges that can come with managing a private water supply, right? Because the less you know about it, the more difficult it is going to be to safely manage that water supply. Next, please. So water quantity, this I think was definitely an area of concern. 13% of respondents said no when asked if they always have enough drinking water. So that indicates that about 1 in 7 respondents do not have an adequate supply of water throughout the year. Moving on to water quality is averages rating is around fair, but it's definitely weighted more towards poor and very poor. Next, please. To get more specific, folks were asked what types of problems their untreated water has, and water quality problems are widespread. So multiple selections could be made here, and just over half of respondents reported 3 or more problems with their untreated water. It's worth noting these are obviously self-reports of water quality, and so may or may not be related to test results, but I think does indicate, you know, the need for potential testing to isolate and actually properly treat water for the types of problems that it may have. It's also important to note that some of these problems are problems that could have health impacts, such as bacteria, right? That could result in immediate health impacts. Things like sediment, discoloration could be maybe more indicators of things that could have health impacts. And then other things like hardness, right? It's not going to have a health impact, but it has very real nuisance or aesthetic impacts that can affect quality of life. So I think it should come as no surprise then, right, that many residents, most residents that responded to this survey are treating their water at home. The chart in the middle shows that annual cost of managing one's water supply, and the average cost is about $400 per year. 31 of those folks reported spending more than $1,000 per year just on maintaining water supply. When it comes to capital costs, about half of the respondents reported a major investment in the last decade, and the average cost for that was $4,445. 3 of those reports were over $25,000. So some people have had to invest really significant amounts into their own water systems. So we also asked about interest in municipal supply, right? Because some areas of the town, there were 15% of folks already are getting their water from a municipal supply. So this question is asking, how interested are you in changing your source to a municipal supply if it's available? 60% said they are either very or somewhat interested in changing to a municipal source. So there's, you know, good interest there, and I think that's worth looking at in a little more detail. What's also probably worth looking at in more detail is that willingness to pay. About a third each of respondents said either less than $500 per year is what they would be willing to pay, or between $500 and $1,000. And a good chunk also said either unwilling or unable to pay. So there's differences in opinion there in terms of willingness to pay. So it's probably, I would think, worth looking at like maybe more geographically, like if there are areas of particular concern or with particular interest. So finally, the last part of the survey asked about concerns, and these are concerns related to, protecting one's water supply. And there's considerable concern out there. Almost half of respondents reported that they were, these top two concerns here. So the first being manure, fertilizer, storage or applications, and then also drought and or flood. So it was, I think, 48% and 46% respectively. So there is really, I would say, considerable amount of concern in this area. And I think this is something that either in terms of education or outreach, best management practices, but is probably something that the town may wish to think about in more detail, addressing these concerns. And that is completes the presentation here this evening. I'm glad to answer any questions about this survey or this project. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. That was very
Yeah.
informative. Yeah. Would you mind just going back, Chris, to one slide? I just wanted to ask a question about the pumping. There's a pumping question. I'm sorry.
Yes.
So lack
Oh.
of water supply due to pumping of,
Adjacent wells.
got it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
I
that
didn't
makes
realize
sense.
that.
That, I mean, it was hard
Yeah.
to fit all of that in.
Yep. Yeah, and yeah, so I mean, I highlighted the kind of top two concerns there, but I think it's worth noting, there are a considerable amount of concerns for quite a few issues here.
Excellent. Any questions board have?
Thank you for seeing this through.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Rural water, but turning over that Roxanne's suffered too, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to also mention, I will follow up with kind of like the raw data set in addition here, so that, as the town moves forward into other planning tools, you'll have that data to work with
Wonderful.
in whatever way is most useful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we're very lucky. I'd like to sing your praises. We're very lucky to have you in our community because Becky comes to us previously from the health department. And so she brings a wealth and is a nearby neighbor as well. So you're certainly in our neck of the woods.
Yeah. No,
But we
I-
appreciate
I
it.
want to ask a question.
Yes.
So if it's found that, let's say, there's an issue from a farm runoff, what's the remedy?
I wish I had a clear answer on that. I think it depends on a lot of factors. But I think it can be really difficult to demonstrate, first of all, a change in someone's water supply and then a cause for that change. The other really unfortunate thing in this case is that New York State doesn't regulate private water supplies. And so even if you have a change, you have a cause, you might not have any recourse. And that, I mean, I don't have a good way to explain that to somebody whose well is being affected.
Right.
It's truly unfortunate. I mean, there are some protections when it comes to manure spreading, I will
Right.
say, and you can call your local health department about this. If manure is being spread with closer than 100 feet to someone's drinking water well,
Right.
I mean, they'll at least help you out with like an initial test for E. coli, right?
Yeah.
In terms of follow-up action, that can be more difficult, but there is some amount of responsiveness in those cases. But I think that's a pretty severe
Yeah.
case.
It was interesting. We actually had a similar question brought up with the comp plan interviews. The consultants that we were interviewing for the comp plan. And they both surprisingly said that it's actually not regulation, but it's education and incentives that the town's best toolboxes are for helping the farmers understand, knowing all the regulations, helping them know where, because they might not know where wells are either. I mean, most of the time we have something sticking out of the ground, but they could be covered. Like ours is surrounded by stones. You don't necessarily know it's there. But that's hopefully something that we can be looking at in the comp plan.
Yeah, and the Soil and Water Office is a great resource for that. Like they incentivize the programs, they work with farmers, but it does, require
There's a reason why the.
some
manure is being
participation.
spread. So we
yeah.
need to find alternatives for that too.
Yeah.
One question I have is just, so there was a good portion that said that they would be interested in municipal water. I think you said 39%. There would be a way where we can take the data and see if it's like targeted to certain areas that might be able to
Yes.
be in some of the areas that we've been talking about or hearing from people that they might want
Yes,
water.
and if you, do you mind if we pull that up back up just for a second? I think there's a map in here. So yes, so those types of things can be mapped. I ran into more problems than I expected in trying to come up with a way to do that in a way that's like public facing, that the
Right.
public could access and
Right.
both protect
Mhm.
individual response privacy. I don't want to rule it out entirely, but it will, if that's something we want to work towards, it will require help from like our GIS developer.
Okay.
It's above my head. That being said, this is what I put right in here, but we can do,
Okay.
we can do more with this. We just wanted to be really sensitive about,
Of
what
course.
was gonna
Yeah.
be put out in the public sphere.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of, geospatial analysis that can be done with this data.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely want to respect everybody's confidentiality.
That's helpful to know based on what areas or general areas may
Yeah.
be adjacent.
So the maps that are included in the report, like we
Oh,
took
yeah.
the street names off the base map.
Mhm.
And also zoomed out, I think, quite far.
Yeah.
So
It'd be very hard for us to
It-
narrow it down to an exact house in a lot of those
yeah,
areas.
yeah. And so that was what, because since this report is publicly
course.
available, of course, but then any further analysis would be up to you guys.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, thank you. This is,
Yeah, and if you have any questions, moving forward as, with the report or otherwise, please feel free to reach out anytime.
and we'll get this posted on the town's website, so it's accessible to the public. Thank you so much, Becky. It's been
Thank
a
you.
pleasure to work with you. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, guys.
Wonderful.
I just wanted to know if we could add something in the source water. Because we
Sure.
don't have reports from our committee, right? Just-
We don't normally do committee reports on the second
but it
meeting.
just kind of connects
Sure,
to
that'd be
that.
great.
So one thing is that we found out that we're getting a new technical specialist, so I don't think the plan's gonna get that slowed down.
Oh, good.
And that's gonna start at the end of this week, so we're working on connecting with them. And I heard from the DOH folks who aren't having any problem going forward with the testing program it's gonna be happening towards the end of May, and they got a little over 100 interested responses, which I thought was really good. They were quite surprised. They said that's kind of true. And I just wanted to make a comment that back to Rich's point about and Becky's that, often you don't know if there's a change. So part of the idea in this source water protection plan that we're working on is there's a protection and implementation section to it. And so one of the big things that we've already been talking about some, even though we don't have it drafted, is, public education and information. And this testing program is one sort of way to sort of get people aware of that some things you can test for pretty inexpensively every year. And the health department actually recommends you do if you have, a vulnerability or a concern or a worry, such as if you were worried about, say, manure in your well or something, you can test for the E. coli and the nitrates. And then you can deal with it if you needed to. So those are the kind of things we're gonna use. This survey is gonna help a lot to incorporate into our education outreach recommendations for implementation steps for the public. So anyway, thanks.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to everybody on the committee. We appreciate all the work that's going into that. And next up, we are gonna welcome up our budget officer, Michelle, right, is gonna talk to us. And Blix is coming up too, and we need another chair. Thanks so much, Becky. Let me grab a chair.
I
Chair.
Caitlin. Your workout.
It is, it's literally the only thing workout that I plan to do. So.
Alrighty. You can go to the next one.
Let's just appreciate the beauty of that.
Same template from last year. You might remember, So Blix is gonna hop in here whenever relevant, or whenever there's a question. that I can't answer. We're doing the 2023 financial year review. Last year, we did this a little bit earlier in the year, but because of scheduling, here we are. I based this on the template from the past couple years. We just sort of started doing this in the past couple years. So as everybody knows, our financial accounting software doesn't have analytical reporting. All of the analysis does have to happen by hand. So when I first started in this position, I spent a lot more time trying to guess what everybody wanted to analysis on. And I found that I spent a lot of time doing analysis that might not have been helpful. So please let me know what is helpful, how you want to look at this this financial information year after year, because we can just start creating the standard for it. So so yeah, with all that said, I'll also note that if there are particular questions about the 2023 financial year, it's unlikely that we'll be able to answer them in this setting, but we'll certainly take note of them, include it in the template, and then follow up over email or however most appropriate. So this is a broad overview of the 2023 financial year and includes our major funds, which are listed there, the A, BA, the A, the B, DB, all those funds, which as we talk about those funds, I'll just say it in the layman's terms there for what the fund consists of. Some reporting updates for 2023. Blixey submitted what is now known as the AFR in February. So the AUD is no more. It's now called the AFR, which I can only assume is annual financial report.
You got it.
Okay. And we also went through an independent audit for 2023 finances. We just approved the financial report draft. So that will be coming soon to the board directly, and we'll be scheduling a time for the auditors to come in to review the 2023 audit. So, so yeah, just all ears about what's going to be most useful for you. Looking at this 1,000, very high up information. So one thing I'll point out is that because of some formulas that I didn't realize were in the table that I was using, the cells in green are changed from what was on the website as of about 3:30 today. But if the town board accessed it through the SharePoint, that was saved yesterday at some point. So so anything in green, there's 2 tables that were affected and they're nothing earth shattering. So yes.
The end of year estimate,
Mm-hmm.
is that what our budget was?
So yeah, so the end of year estimates get developed during budget season. It's how we calculate fund balance, what's available for fund balance. So those end of year estimates, you'll see those numbers line up with what's in the adopted budget.
But they are in
We do
fact,
modifications, right?
Not to the end of year estimates, as far as the
Oh.
fund balance goes.
So is that the budget we started in fall, late summer, fall?
So those end of year estimates, yes, yeah. So the ones that you're looking at right now are actually from I think we finalized them in September of 2023.
2022.
2023.
2023.
so let me just
This is-
clarify, those are end of year estimates that are calculated while we're developing the budget for 2024. So those were our estimates of where we thought we were
This
going
is
to be at the end of
2023.
2023.
Yes, and they were calculated in
Compared to what
2023.
actually happened. So during your budget process for
So I would be
2024,
interested in like, when we, in 2022, when we were putting the budget together for 2023.
so the original budget,
Yeah, so if it's 1,132,000, is that what we budgeted?
no, that's what we estimated where we would be.
Yeah, so I would be more curious about
Okay.
as we're going around those, like meetings to say, oh, we think we're gonna.
So on this
Our
slide,
revenue is gonna be this and our expenses are gonna be this.
To see how well we
Yes.
projected,
How far we were
What-
from the budget?
yeah. What,
And we-
Well,
what
these
we're
are our
designing.
projections.
Yeah.
If
But-
they aren't the original budget though.
And when we do budgeting, we see both what the original budget was for, say, the previous year. So when we do our budgeting in the fall, we'll see our original budget projections for 2024 that we adopted in 2023.
Mhm.
And then we will also do are end of year estimates. So those numbers, when we budget, you see both of those numbers. We're just not showing them to you for the purposes.
Yeah, I
here.
just think in a role like this, I would be, how good were we, right?
Yeah,
So.
I just made a note
okay,
there, yeah.
All right, so for
Yep.
next year, we'll
Sure.
add a column that says modified. So this is an interesting slide to me because it demonstrates to me that we're getting better at our end of year estimates. We haven't tracked this for very long, but because it does impact fund balance, I thought it was an interesting number to look at. You know, when you look at the A fund, the difference in the appropriations, that $71,000, that looks like a big number to me, but then when I actually look at the percentage of a whole, I'm like, all right, actually, that's pretty good. So yeah, not too many surprises during, I mean, the end of year estimate, that almost for the A fund, for instance, is mortgage tax, essentially, for the revenue side of it anyway, so. Alrighty, so moving on to reserves here. This column, the table to the left there, displays the total in reserves at the end of last year. And then the additions to the reserves by fund. And that additions column does include interest. And then we did appropriate a little bit of money out of a fund, assigned fund. And then just as a comparison, taking a look at what our planned budgeted reserve activity is in 2024. We're not adding to reserves as much. We could do a budget modification as the years go on, as the year goes on, if we'd like. So. I will say that we still are working on, so how do we know if this is enough in our reserves? We're still working on defining our capital plan. I think one of the great aspects of the ARPA use of funds process that we're going through right now is that we're getting some harder, firmer numbers for the projects that are on our capital plan. And being able to plug those in really helps us identify if our reserves are funded correctly or not. So I believe in most, there are a handful of reserves that just my gut, knowing what we don't know, they're underfunded. Like in Water District 3, for instance, I know that those reserves are underfunded. Yeah. So fund balance across funds is the next slide. When we go to fund balance policy, when we go to discuss this is, you might want to keep this table out and compare it to the draft policy.
Do you want to distinguish fund balance from reserves?
Sure. So this slide is speaking specifically about unappropriated fund balance. Reserves are indeed technically fund balance, but this is just unappropriated. So everything but, our savings account, for lack of a better word, anything that's not called for, it's not assigned to a specific use through reserve, and it's not appropriated through our budgeting process. So, we do have as far as our draft policy goes, we do have a couple funds that have high fund balance. And, that our fund balance policy is helping to address that. And the one thing I'll say in the B fund, which proportionally has the highest fund balance, something that you'll see in the coming months and the coming financial reports, monthly financial reports, is that we're going to, once we get a multi-year budget for the comp plan update, once we have that updated budget number, we're going to actually take part of the unappropriated fund balance in the B fund and earmark it internally, so that you'll see that as a separate amount, because we know that we're going to need fund balance in the B fund for this comp plan update. So. Alrighty, and then this next slide here was also, we reported on this last year. Those additions in yellow to equipment and infrastructure, we all know that that equipment is mostly, I think almost entirely, the Mack Granite, that truck we were waiting on for years. So there's an addition there. And then that infrastructure number, that 111 number represents 2 roads that were paved in 2023. And those deletions are we surplused a couple pieces of equipment. So this is our proof of GASB compliance with all of our asset data management that we've been doing the past couple years. So those were the high level across funds analysis, and then we're going to move into just a couple some notes about the specific funds, starting with the A fund. So for 2023, 2023 was a really busy year in the A fund. Everyone remembers we had our special election. We also started our IT modernization project, which has been a lot of work. I think 2023 also had the most number of grants that we were administering. There was a lot of grants that came through, and including 2 grants from the county. And then we had a couple, these other larger grants that we've been working with. So we continue to develop our budgeting technique with our community organization funding process and our other budgeting and multi-year planning techniques. We're a member of the LDC, which represents a lot of work, especially for Caitlin. We brought youth development in-house in 2023, and it also was a year where we had a bubble for the youth employment salary line, where we're playing catch up from the pandemic years. And then, as we all know, our recreation program is growing, which means that our fees revenues are growing for that. And there was also increased summer camp enrollment in 2023. And then big picture in the A fund, you'll see this is sort of for each fund, we'll go through the program highlights, and then relative to the 2023 modified budget, areas of underspending included town hall equipment line, which is the line that we were funding all of our IT modernization efforts through. And you saw in March that we ended up paying for a good chunk of that this year. So we underspent that in the 2023 modified budget. Over earning categories in the A fund include sales tax. You'll see that in all of the funds, and then our rec department fees. We also earned more than we thought we were going to. And moving on to the B fund, financial, these projects that had financial impact in 2023, the comp plan update, obviously, we were fully staffed for the first time in a really ever probably the B fund, including administrative support. And I just wanted to take a moment to say that with that fully staffed B fund office, I've noticed personally a lot of systems improvements, and just as far as process and procedure goes, I think they're doing a really good job in catching up on all that stuff. So, and relative to the 2023 modified budget, areas of underspending were we had in 2023, we had a B fund vehicle in there for a variety of reasons we did not end up procuring. We ended up underspending the comp plan because, when it comes to project cash flow, it can be really hard to line that up with our budgeting process. So we underspent there. And then sales tax and building permits were over earning revenue categories. And then in the DA fund, the DA fund is where snow removal and equipment capital planning and purchases occur. So we had a pretty light year when it comes to snow. We underspent in the snow removal category. One thing that I did want to just mention, that in both the highway DA and DB funds, those 2 highway funds, legally per state law, we cannot have contingency lines. So it'd be great if we could have a contingency line in the DA fund for when we get hard hit years with snow, but no. You'll see year after year, our snow removal lines are underspent because we have to plan for the most expensive case scenario in the winter. Something that
Don't we have a snow and ice reserve?
we do. Yep. And that I do not think can be spent on salary. I think it has to be, so what I knew is that it's like
Salt or something?
damage. and-
I think it's
and-
if there's
yeah.
like a catastrophic type event where roads are damaged or something has to be repaired. It's more of a capital type item.
But let's look into,
We can look
because
at
if
it
there is
more.
a storm event, that might be an interesting way. Thank you, Mary, for bringing that up. Can you just make a note of
Yes,
that
I
for me?
can.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So that I can. I think it's interesting to follow the OT hours, because I think that that's really how you track how bad of a winter we had. So I always keep an eye on that year after year. There's been some management practices that have changed that have decreased over time relative to a decade ago. So those most recent numbers, I think, really help demonstrate the impact that snow has on our budget.
Also when the snow hits, I remember we did not have a heavy snow year this year, but we did have snow events over weekends. Like
Mm-hmm,
getting iced out, and that also drives it. If you have a snow event on a Tuesday morning, when they're already showing up on a regular schedule, it's different than when you have ice on Sunday morning.
Yep, right.
So,
Or on a holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those Monday holidays really add up. So over earning revenue categories in the DA fund, sales tax and equipment sales. Equipment sales, we don't always budget because as we saw with the Matt Granite, Scott can't sell a piece of equipment until he gets the other one on hand. So it might not always line up the way we think. So we didn't budget for that in 2023, and he ended up selling vehicles in 2023. So. Alrighty, in the DB fund, this is where any long-term improvement to town roads occurs. It's also where culvert and ditch maintenance occur. We in 2023, we did great work with the paving and culvert capital planning. And I think, you know, the town highway staff do so much work clearing out those culverts and ditches. I mean, that's basically what they stay busy doing. And what that means is that there's less flooding throughout the town. So I think that's a really important unseen thing that happens at the town, and it actually takes up a lot of time. So, and then areas of underspending, we didn't use all of our chips in 2023, but that gets rolled over, and Scott is planning on a multi-year basis for chips. And that CHIPS is the New York State aid for long-term road improvements, which is the definition of that is 10 years or more. So if you in 2023, we redid Terrell Road and Indian Fort Road, and we cannot use CHIPS funding again on that until year 11 for those road segments. So that's how that works. And then once again, sales tax over earnings category in there. Alrighty, in the SM fund, which is the ambulance fund where we pay for our EMS contract with the Village of Trumansburg. We have two sources of revenue in the ambulance fund. One is the billing that we receive through insurance collections, and then of course the tax levy. In that top table there, I'll just note that the ambulance fund revenue line is actually pretty erratic. You can see the difference between year after year. And the way that we budget for this is taking the 3 and 5 year average and just trying to apply the best logic during budgeting season. And the thing I'll point out about the ambulance tax levy is look at the difference between 2018 and 2023. That's a huge impact. That's basically, that's a huge impact for our tax levy to be paying $100,000 more. That's something that obviously we'll be continuing to problem solve on as we move forward. And then this is the last slide here. Water District 3 is another major fund. In 2023, the now DPW staff replaced almost all the meters in the district with radio meters, which was huge efficiency savings. There were also several software upgrades in 2023. And due to underspending in a variety of lines, we ended up not needing to use the reserve that we had budgeted for the radio meter and software upgrades. So that was good news. But like the snow removal PS line, Water District 3, you have one shot to collect the money that you need throughout the year, and that's the tax levy as far as how to ensure that you have, you know, like it's a water district, you have to make sure it's running. So that those underspent lines we're moving more and more of the unknowns, like for instance, in 2024, we used to, in 2023, for instance, we used to have a budget line for specifically for water main breaks or hydrant replacements, which seem to happen almost once a year. Instead, our budgeting technique has changed, is changing over to just increasing our contingency, which I think you can only have 10% of your overall budget. So we're starting to do things like that to help with those efficiencies. So yeah, 2023 in a nutshell.
Any questions?
And we have Michael's request about the comparison of the modified budget in that first table, but is there any other things like that that you think would be helpful to see? And obviously this isn't your only chance to answer. So if you have thoughts about the way that you'd like to see this information presented annually, let us know. And we will make sure that.
Very good roll up, thank you.
Good.
The question of Water C3, we made our last payment,
Yay.
so that'll be a
This year.
big deal this budget season, right?
It will.
What we're gonna
It
do.
will. Yep. Yeah, the Water District 3 reserves are underfunded. So that's and we need a capital plan. So those are my two thoughts.
So
As far
from
as
the
that goes.
SM fund, you said 2023 actual was 104. What did that relate to?
Should go back to that.
Second to the last slide.
Oh, the
That's the
ambi-
ambulance room.
insurance billing.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Thank you.
A lot of work, but this is simplified for even me with no financial background.
I've
So,
spent a
appreciate the
lot
time.
of time doing analysis that really was only helpful to a very few, so. Like to try to make it as efficient as possible, but also in a way that is useful to you. So. Cool. Right.
Thank you so much. It's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes, and now we have multiple years to look at if you'd like some reading in comparison. So thank you so much, Michelle.
I will say that budget, Blixie did update the multi-year, the historical line by line. And I'm happy to send that or print that to anybody who's interested. You know, that we hand that out usually once a year, and that's one of those simple tools that has made a huge impact, and we're maintaining it year after year. So, you know, it's got all the budget lines and then the average and through from 2018 on, or 2011. maybe.
Boy, you would think that Williamson would develop some analytical tools for governments. Maybe they historically have not looked at those things.
My guess is that Williamson sees a little competition in the marketplace, is what I think, based on my frustration with their reporting. So many things I think Williamson.
I
should
mean,
be able
that's
to
why
do.
you make these
Right,
reports.
yeah.
You can make decisions
Yes.
based on the numbers.
Yes.
I think AI is listening and they are plotting as we speak.
AI is nice.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I am wondering if the board would be amenable, Matt McKenna is on, and he is actually on vacation. But is coming off of his vacation to attend tonight, and I was wondering if you'd be amenable to bringing up item 7B, the ARPA process.
Sure.
To discuss things. Matt, is it convenient for you to join us? Awesome. Thank you so much for being present remotely.
Absolutely, no problem.
So for the community and for the town board, I just wanted to touch base on where we are in terms of the ARPA process. We were tasked back in earlier this year to my department to go start collecting quotes, making financial determinations, rough estimates, scoping assistance on 6 identified projects that were identified by the town board as the 6 most important that came out of the ARPA ratings and review process. And for the purposes of this meeting, those projects were the town hall parking lot replacement, design installation of a generator for the town highway barn, a stormwater plan for the town, transition funds for the Trumansburg Ulysses Summer Camp to Camp Barton in 2025, a private well testing program, and a town hall safety assessment combined with potential for physical investment in those improvements. Currently, we have $229,449 available in ARPA funds that need to be allocated by the town board in this process, and they need to be allocated to specific projects by the end of this calendar year. We received, and they were included in the board packet. They were provided to town board members. The scoping documents that came together for the town hall parking lot replacement, for the design installation, the generator, the highway barn. We had previously gone after a FEMA grant for the design work associated with that. So MRB was able to do an update to that, and those materials were provided. Stormwater plan, the Water Source Protection Committee put together documents related to private well testing. We've discussed the safety concerns and upgrades that are necessary for town hall. These are the different projects we were covering, and as we knew going into this process, there's more need in those projects financially than we have funds available. For tonight's conversation, it's having reviewed all of these materials and thinking they're all wonderful, important programs. The reality is that the parking lot is in dire need of replacement. We've been talking about this for years, and the cost of this is only going up. We had ballpark math back in fall of 2021 when we first brought it up. Ballpark math at that point was $100,000. We have two scoping documents that put that project today, which is no surprise given inflation, demand for construction, and just overall costs that have risen in that amount of time. The estimates are coming at $189,000 for parking lot replacement. Back when it was $100,000, we were also not talking about doing some upgrades that we now recognize as need to be done. We want to make sure that if we do this project, that especially given our location, abutting a steep slope, that stormwater is not coming off of that parking lot rapidly in a rapid rain event. It has been identified now in numerous by both consultants and by staff and members of the public that it is awfully freaking dark in that back parking lot, and that it is not safe to have such darkness in our rear parking lot that serves as our primary entrance for the majority of the public, particularly anybody who needs ADA accessibility, because having our rear door done for ADA accessibility is also has already been allocated. Funds have already been earmarked for that purpose. So
is this for permeable pavement?
permeable pavements, 300 is estimated. If we do all permeable pavement, it's 309,000.
So there's a typo. Project 2B, it says parking lot improvements, pervious pavement, so it's very, but you mean that one should be non-pervious.
Project 2B, no, project 2B is pervious pavement. That means that the water will go through it. Project 2A
Pervious.
is impervious. And then, and Matt was joining us today because there are a lot of pieces and components related to this. And I thought the town board would have questions. There's also a potential too, that there may be a way to do a kind of a mixture of both permeable and non-permeable pavement, and do sections that are permeable that would allow water to more slowly percolate into the ground. And so that would likely be a cost that falls between the 189. We don't 189,000 and 309. Again, we won't have final numbers. These are scoping numbers, but I knew the town board would have questions. Matt, did you want to say anything in particular about the projects, or would you prefer? jumping, if you want to go over your process for how you did this, put these documents together, I think that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Again, as Caitlin mentioned, MRB was asked to help provide a rough order of magnitude of the potential project costs, as well as try to create an outline what the phases of the projects would be and what in our opinion, an approach would be to implement this project. I spoke and we touched on for both scenarios, 2A and 2B, essentially the same approach. We would recommend the town look at a conceptual phase, design phase, where a consultant could come in, do an initial site visit, understand where stormwater currently moves and flows to. We know there's catch basins in the back of the parking lot from survey information as well as roadside. So there is infrastructure along the front of the town hall where any collected runoff could be conveyed to or piped to. During that conceptual phase, we would work with a electrical engineer to do a site lighting and improvements plan that could look at number of light posts, size of conduit, size of wire that would be needed to run to any lighting desires by the town. I think also during this phase, if there's rain gardens or vegetation, or how do you want the parking lot to look and feel from a spacing? Do you want to have it striped? Where would the striping go? Those types of things would be hashed out specifically if the town's going to look at issuing an RFP or an RFQ. You would be able to use that conceptual plan to include with the document so that when looking at potential consultants, everyone's kind of playing in the same ball field. That would be, go ahead.
Matt, hold on just a sec.
So
Go ahead.
in terms of the lighting, the utility installation is not the lighting itself, but the infrastructure of the lighting. When it says utility installation,
Yeah, we don't have electricity.
that's not lights yet, right? That's just a.
Lights?
It would be to get,
the property ready.
you would get power out to a location.
Okay, so installing actual lighting is in addition to this,
It's probably a different contractor.
right?
In terms of, is the cost for installation of the light post part of that? That would be a point where we could look into the conceptual phases of quantifying what type and feel the light post would be. So I think that'd be something that you'd work through during the conceptual phase to, you're working within a budget, so you could look at that and evaluate options. But I do think that has room in it for the posts themselves, the light posts themselves. So that'd be your underground conduit, your wire, as well as the structure for the light itself.
One other question. So I thank you for putting this together. I mean, we've heard a lot of different things about pervious pavement, some of which does not get great reviews by certain people. Do you guys have an opinion on pervious versus impervious? And what have you seen in that regard?
We don't typically see it too often. And I would just say that the main focus for that is maintenance. Those parking lots with pervious pavement need to be maintained. And when I say maintained, they need to be vacuumed or swept so that you're not any sedimentation or any debris that makes its way onto the asphalt will actually, if it's not maintained, will plug up. Those pores will plug over time and result in that parking lot, decrease the effectiveness of the water wanting to flow into it. So that's why the maintenance is critical, because if you don't keep up with it, the surface is gonna plug and you will be back to a condition where you have surface runoff.
For $309,000, I want some more certainty about its effectiveness. I mean, who's gonna get out there with a broom and brush the thing?
You are. It's the deputy supervisor. I don't know if you know that, but I wrote, it's written
Hope
in.
they have a nice broom.
So we don't, and like, I watched a presentation that someone, I believe local, maybe a Cornell professor, provided to the town board. His mention was, it works in some cases and it doesn't in others. MRB specifically has done it where, it was a street repaving project in a village. Instead of doing the whole road and, shoulder, they actually decided to just do the shoulder. So where you sheet the water off the side of the roads, that's where you had your water infiltration, so that you weren't doing it for the whole width of the roadway to keep costs down.
Matt, quick question. Is the preparation, the site preparation different between options 2A and 2B? I'm just looking at the asphalt sub-base removal quotes. And it's almost double for the pervious pavement.
So for 2A, I assumed about you'd remove your asphalt layer, but then you'd probably take it down around 12 inches deep. So maybe you have a 16 to 18 inch excavation. That would be for a full normal rebuild of your asphalt parking lot. With the pervious pavement in 2B, this is where the cost changes significantly. Is you're probably 3 to 4 foot of an excavation, because you want to have the sub base is critical. That allows the sub base being so much deeper for the pervious pavement. It acts as a filter, right? So naturally water is going to flow through and be filtered out with 3 to 4 feet of stone sub base. But that also acts as your reservoir and storage too, for containing that water that's been collected or, hit the parking lot. You don't want it to just necessarily sheet right back off or flow out a pipe. You want to try to store it so that it can further infiltrate into the ground. And one item that we note here is there's probably going to be some geotechnical work that would be recommended as part of the project, so you know what the existing soil conditions are. Because if the soil isn't good, it's not going to work, right? If the water can't make its way through, it could actually negatively impact it. So if you don't have a way to let the water flow through the ground, or in some cases get rid of it, you can go through that freeze thaw effect on the sub base and the asphalt, and it could actually negatively impact it. So that's something to consider. Is you'd want to have a geotechnical investigation done. You could come out with the town backhoe, dig a hole, have a geotechnical engineer, make a recommendation on what the existing soil conditions are, and have some subsurface soil information to make a recommendation on what the cross section or detail would be.
Okay,
Great, and
thank
then
you.
in addition to the extra cost, how often do you have to repave this, the pervious?
That's a good question. I don't know
Is
that I
that
have a.
double-
I think
That's
that
doubling, that's gonna be doubling the cost of impervious, so it's a
so.
huge commitment. go to
I would
repave.
expect that your repavement just of that top 4 to 6 inches would be similar. I'm sure there's, an increase for the pervious pavement, but the majority of your cost is building that sub base. So where you have 3 to 4 feet, yeah, you got to pay and buy stone to bring it in. But what you got to also consider is you got to pay trucking to remove all that material and get it out of sight. And that's a lot of, your trucking, your excavation, all that is a factor of really 7, right? So my quantity of stone was 7 times the 2A to 2B. And that's all material that has to get dug up and get taken off site and also replaced. So there's that handling and labor aspect of it.
We know anybody who has pervious pavement in around here at Cornell, or
What
you
Andy
do?
Hillman said down.
Where do you have yours?
Gas Park.
Where?
It's Peterson Law
Yeah,
Tower and Jet Falls.
how does it work?
Works out, okay for now, but it's just like Matt says, it plugs up. And we've got on Tower Road, we've got a bunch of catch basins that instead of the catch basins that flow in, they made it a pervious pavement, and they're all plugged up because part of the road treatment during the winter time is they put sand and
Right.
salt and then all the stuff that kicks up on people's cars drop off on the road and they're completely plugged now. So it's a maintenance thing.
Right.
And then, one of the things I had never thought of, but the fellow at work that does all of our repaving. He says that asphalt is one of the most recycled materials that we have. Cause they'll grind it up and they'll take it to a place and they'll reuse it.
Right.
So it's not something that's thrown away. So the parking lots, and roads and things, it's all recycled materials anyway nowadays. Very little of it is brand new. They'll add oil to it. So it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
The other thing that I, just food for thought, and I saw on the town website, the supervisors outlined for, this project. And the safety concerns with lack of lighting, the safety concerns of the condition of the pavement. A maintenance thing and an item that you don't want to do is you don't want to add sand or you don't want to add salt to your surface, right? Because you're going to plug up those pores and create more maintenance for yourselves. But this is a town hall and a public place. So, not adding salt or not trying to de-ice your parking lot, is something that maybe could be overthought or not thought about in terms of how you're going to provide access for the community safely.
Good point.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so. What do we? I guess what's the step now in this ARPA?
Are you going to all 6 or what's your plan of attack here?
So, well, my plan of, we can go through all 6. What I mean, and we certainly can, my recommendation to the board is that this is our primary project and that we begin working on it tomorrow with approval of the town board. And the reason being this draft timeline. The draft timeline to get where we need to go on this project is going to take the bulk of the rest of the year. And we are going to land, because the 189, if that number is a fairly close, accurate one, we know that there's going to be an additional approximately estimate of $5,000 in legal costs associated with the complicated ownership that is that back parking lot. All the information has gone to Nate, town attorney, and he's put together that he thinks he can bring it in for under 5,000, hopefully maybe less than that too, if it goes well. But that's another factor that's going to have to be determined, and it'll probably be simpler with non-permeable asphalt like we currently have as a replacement of dealing with with the neighboring owner. Because if we don't, I would imagine that the high cost associated with this will drive up their cost on their end if they were to run a project with us concurrently in the same materials on a non-permeable one.
So are they gonna absorb some of these costs in this estimate?
No, this is only for our
This is
part.
only for our.
This is
owned
only for
area.
our ownership of the parking lot. This is not for the part the town doesn't own.
So are we just going to pay our portion of that?
Well, that becomes a question. I mean, the town can't go, it sounds like the town may have just paid for everything last time. But I wasn't here last time and you weren't here last time, and we're not going to pay for someone else's parking lot. But that has to be negotiated in this process with the attorney about how we're going to deal with it. It may be that the only part that gets paved is the part we own.
How many feet is it out from that other?
I mean, I think it was I couldn't tell you exactly how many feet, it's in the packet is the survey, so you can see, it's in the packet, right? I believe we uploaded it. Yeah. As
So
soon
why-
as I said that, I'm like, so I panicked that we didn't make it, but yes, it's in it, it's a bit of a chunk, but it's not a huge
Not a
chunk.
huge chunk.
I mean,
Easy for people to get in and out without having 2 separate asphalt things.
right, I mean, I think if it doesn't get paved, my perception would be it's not catastrophic to the town if nothing else happens to that piece. But I think there would be a value to the property owner to want to maybe repave their section at the same time and jump into our project. But we're only gonna do ours.
Right, but I mean, there's a vested interest in hopefully having it all done.
Absolutely. And that's why we would dedicate some legal time to it.
Right.
So we might be looking at an estimate at the low end of, if this, and again, this all has to go through actual full
Right, yeah.
estimates but we're looking at right now, a number in the ballpark, $194,000, and we have 226.
Right.
Then this is not a not complicated project, right? If we choose not to do this with ARPA funding, this is gonna be one of the projects I'm gonna bring to you in 2025.
Yeah.
Like we have to do it.
That's really bad. out
Has to
It's-
be done.
Yeah,
But all I'm saying is to give them, the other owners of the property some incentive to join us. We can do some of all this engineering work and not have to necessarily
right.
charge them for it.
I mean, if it's all, you're right.
Make it more beneficial that they join us.
I mean, I think there are some costs that we would have that someone else wouldn't have. And, I think there are certainly ways to do that could hopefully, because it is in our best interest that entire parking lot
Yeah.
is,
But it-
So my recommendation is that Mary's needs focus approach, which, you brought that up at one point, is really, and it is really thematically what I'm looking at. And I think that I think every project on here is worth doing. I don't think there's a question. These are all valuable, worthwhile projects. But I think for the town, the two important projects are the parking lot and addressing known safety concerns in this building. So that's what I'm suggesting we prioritize the ARPA funding for. So I'd like to have that conversation. If the board feels differently, we can start delving into all the other projects.
Well, I think we're all agree on the parking lot, right? It's the number one issue.
Yeah.
So we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
Which,
So, I can agree on the parking lot, but if we use some ARPA funding as like seed money to figure out how to get it going. Because it doesn't sound like it can be built this year anyway with this approach.
Doesn't need to be,
It doesn't need to be built this year.
you just have to have the contract with, would it be the
Right,
design
but
for
the other 5 items are things that we felt like important also. And so if we can spread the money between all 5 of them, and then as we figure out what the parking lot really is gonna be, then that's something we could fund when we do our budget later this year.
Are you saying fund the other projects from our budget for 2025? Is that what you're saying?
No, like fund the parking lot out of ARPA funds for like, say, the design or the,
Partial funding.
or the legal work or whatever that we need to get it rolling along. And then, kind of continue with the other 5 items. Because I think all these are important also. So where I'm coming from is to say, I wouldn't, the parking lot's important to me, yes, but I wouldn't, I would prefer not to put all of the ARPA funds to it. But to, kind of keep all 6 of them going. If we can.
So I would not be in favor of that. And the reason I'm not in favor of that is the parking lot is gonna take a tremendous amount of administrative time. I wanna know that the town board is committed to actually paying for it, number one. And we don't have to, the way that the federal government will allow us to allocate it, we can allocate the funds even if we are not at final executed contracts, provided we have very clear designation, especially if we're going to exceed the ARPA funds for using these funds. This is a lot of work. This administratively is a lot of work, running 6 projects concurrently when the other 5 are not as time sensitive. That parking lot needs to be redone. Like, to me, there's no question about that. And it's not, the well testing is great. That's looking at like a 2025 project. Why don't we just pay for that out of fund balance? The summer camp, I will be coming with a funding request for summer camp, because you heard Will last time. Just to fulfill our commitment to the community, we're gonna have to stand up administrative support to that. I would recommend paying for that as a one-time cost out of fund balance. I think we can do the other projects, but I think trying to pretend that we have the administrative bandwidth to run all these concurrently with ARPA is not reasonable. I didn't ever think that we would ever simultaneously be trying to do these. I think we need to stagger them. It doesn't mean things aren't important. This is gonna take a lot of time. So, prioritizing them. We were never going to, with ARPA, be able to fund all 6. It was helping us down to whittle down what we can do and how else to pay for other projects. Because if you want to do all 6, and I'm not opposed to doing all 6, I think they're all important. A lot of those funds, it'd be a lot easier to do them out of fund balance than the
And we have,
regulation.
and
of
we have
ARPA.
plenty of fund balance.
Because each of these are
Right.
But
$20,000 to $50,000, right? For the most part, the other 5 items. Like the budgets that we've received.
Yeah.
And the.
Well, the generator was like 100.
I didn't understand that.
A
That's
hundred
Yeah,
not
it's
thousand
like-
for a generator?
That's not-
Yeah,
That's absurd.
Yeah, I didn't.
I
understand.
read that and I was like, holy moly, it's what?
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know what size generator that was. That was way higher.
It's
than
like,
I had
how often do
expected.
they lose power anyway?
Well, it's every time. I know I would lose power a lot lately.
You want to do the security upgrades too.
I do.
But that's an assessment.
What?
Well, it's the
That's an
assessment. Yes, but I can pay, so we had a quote for an assessment that I could pay, that I could approve without coming to the town board. It comes in about $1,500. That only tells us the work that we need to do. It's going to be in structural
Right.
changes to the building. So we're looking at $30,000-$40,000 maybe.
I mean, that's gonna be doors,
So,
cameras, what else could that? I know we need. the
We don't
doors.
know. Till they give us the assessment.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what
so
they're
we
gonna
can
tell us.
take the assessment out of our.
Yeah,
We can pay for it out of contingency also.
Yeah, so going from the bottom of the well testing program is, they've done a bunch of the homework that's kind of ready to go. Right?
Yes, I mean, if we want to go into, so I'd like to understand from the board, do you want to break up this money into 6 different projects? Or do you want to focus the money in one and look for other ways to fund the 5 other projects?
I personally want to make sure we have enough money in the ARPA to do the market.
Okay, Mary?
Yeah, I would prioritize. the part.
Okay,
And then pay for some of the rest if there's any left over
Well,
or
You know,
out of some balance.
from this is like 40,000, right?
possibly,
Depends on the design.
yeah. I mean, I think the hope is that there's money left. I mean, well, if we go with non-permeable.
Right.
If we go with permeable, there's no money left.
No, and then we need additional money.
Right.
So I'm not in favor of them.
Well, I think we need to get. Would there be any point, like if we went down and we went ahead with focusing on the parking lot? And we get to the conceptual design. And prices could go up.
Mhm.
I mean, I hope they don't, but they really could. We have no idea what's gonna happen over the next couple months. Is there a way to pull out and then put the money into something else then, or is this really, if we make a decision now to go?
No, we haven't signed, no, there's many,
We're committed to the parking lot.
No,
Whether it's 10% more, 20% more,
Sure.
we're gonna do it.
Sure.
We're just gonna do it.
I mean, your question is, could we pull out? Yes, we could pull out.
Okay.
This is, a vote tonight to proceed is not a vote other than we will continue down the path to put something together. The idea being, if we can start on this, effectively tomorrow, then I'm hoping to be able to come to you in a couple of months and say, okay, this is a ballpark, this is where we're looking at, this is how much money we anticipate it's gonna cost, and this is how much money we have left. That'd be my recommendation, is to figure that out, lock that down, and then say, okay, what else do we want to do based on what money we have available? That would be my recommendation. Michael, but how do you feel about that? Or do you think at this point we should just be breaking the money up and paying for?
So we don't have with the timeline, we don't have the construction until next year anyway.
Right.
Which is probably the lion's share of it. So I would let Nate and say Matt, or however we decided to design things, come up with our design. Do that this season, continue with that, design it this season and take a little more relaxed approach about it.
But we gotta
But if we
spend the
want to
ARPA
use the
money
ARPA
by X.
No, we have to commit it,
We-
but if we commit it with our designers,
Right.
right?
But
That's
like
a-
you said, the chunk is gonna be the construction cost, so what do you?
Yeah,
wanna
which
use
is
the
next year,
ARPA
so when
We
we
would
talk-
want to use the ARPA money for that,
Right.
which is why we have to have. a
Well, we can
contract
do this other
year.
stuff. Whatever this other stuff with ARPA money as well, because if we're gonna construct it we'll know by budget season what this is gonna cost us. And we can work, allocate for the parking lot this fall.
I think Caitlin's point about focus and administrative management is important.
But we're not taking our eye off the prize. I mean, those folks have to do their work.
But
Anyway,
I want to make sure that we approve it in a resolution. So if you get a new board, a couple of new board members,
Well,
at some point, you could
nobody's-
always retract the,
you and
I just want to put
nobody-
it,
you guys aren't up for election.
No,
actually,
somebody's up for
every year.
election until next year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
yeah, I think that's that's
but cause it's, by this timeline, it's next year anyway.
right, but we have the money, I still, I would vote to commit the ARPA money. We have some money left, do a project or two out of that, and the rest out of fund
Yeah, but
balance.
the problem is the parking lot in one regard doesn't benefit that many of our.
But it takes, it's funding a project that would have been funded out of taxpayer money anyways. So
Yeah.
we're using it
But-
in lieu of,
But they can feel good about doing Barton or well testing and whatever else we have on here.
Well, we're gonna do all those things.
Well,
I mean, Barton, you can make the argument that not everybody's gonna benefit
Well,
from parking, because it's a
that'll be,
summer,
that'll be a,
that's a summer
plan-
camp.
but that'll be a planning thing, probably.
Right.
figure out What are we, how do we?
And then
work?
you can make the argument that not everybody has a private well,
Yeah.
so it's not gonna benefit it, but I'm just playing devil's.
well, and I would.
Take a vote.
Okay, well, I also wanted to say that I think the back parking lot is really important, and it is because that is going to be the only accessible entrance in to our town hall. I mean, and it is to the benefit, our insurance company has flagged it as a problem, and it's
Maybe
a,
it's only gonna be the only entrance.
For like.
it's the only accessible, if somebody.
ADA
accessible.
ADA,
Yeah, and so I think it's really important. I think it's unfortunate that when the last design happened, that wasn't taken care of in there, and we're fixing that, right? I think that's the primary place that people who are interacting with town hall are parking. And it's dark and the insurance has flagged it as as a risk because of the deterioration combined with if somebody is injured or the car damage.
Yeah.
They're gonna be coming after our insurance claim, which means now that they know that it's an issue, don't be surprised when our insurance, right, it's reflected in our insurance premium. So I think that there is, I don't want anyone to think that this is not benefiting the public, because when it's in fact our public facility, that will get paid for out of public tax dollars. So.
Yeah.
So I don't have a resolution drafted for this other than just a generic, let me what did I draft and find my resolution sheet. Resolved that the Ulysses Town Board directs the town supervisor to oversee the necessary scoping and contractual work necessary to proceed with the following projects identified through the American Rescue Plan Act review process. And so are you making a motion to proceed on the,
Non-permeable asphalt for the parking.
okay. Is there a second?
second,
Any further discussion?
So
Do we have,
question,
yeah, go.
question on the resolution, it says, contractual work necessary to proceed with the following projects. Does that mean all 6 are still on the table? Or how does that work?
No, I just left it blank so then the town board could fill in which projects.
Because by this. by
Lots of
this-
paperwork.
By this document, this says supervisor recommends essentially the parking lot.
Mhm.
Is that what we're approving with this resolution, or? Or
Yeah.
the resolution means all 6 are still in?
The resolution that we're talking about is just for the parking. lot.
It's just, so this resolution is to proceed with, I'm not gonna go sign any contracts. I'll bring you back any contracts, but we need to start the process and begin to be outlined in the timeline. So tomorrow, consultant procurement and contract making for conceptual design. That's what we would work on and bring it back to you with an estimate of a month for authorization to contract for conceptual design. So go out and you're not approving a contract yet. You're approving me to spend our time working to get a contract for you guys to see in a month
For the parking.
for the parking lot. Or whatever other projects you list in there.
So we're committed to spending But what this resolution should cover is spending X amount of money for the whole project, so we know it's there. Cause I don't wanna just approve,
Get out of fund balance.
we can, just not as clean.
Do you need this to be specific to project 2A from the MRB memo where it's the impermeable pavement? Or can it be the conceptual plan for the parking lot?
Well, I mean,
Because I think there's that middle ground that we don't really know about. Maybe there's a combination of the
True.
parking spots can be permeable pavement, but then the driving area is impermeable pavement.
we can add in whatever
Okay.
other, you know,
Say parking lot.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, I think that's what we do down at Gas Park. Part of it is paved and then the parking areas.
Yeah.
Where the cars
We're
go
approving
in.
it to be determined.
Yeah.
Cause we don't know enough. yet.
Exactly. Exactly.
But we're approving the parking lot in some form.
To be moving into the next steps, to try
Right.
to get a consultant on
Yeah,
board to
Yeah,
pull together a conceptual plan.
Yeah.
And do all this research.
that's fine. Because does that sound like a resolution?
I would like to confirm the language with that. Resolved that the Ulysses Town Board directs the town supervisor to oversee the necessary. And do we want to say consultant procurement for conceptual design or scoping contractual work necessary to proceed with the parking lot project? As identified through the ARPA review process.
That's fine.
But do you want to substitute the scoping and contractual work for? Caitlin, you said something like consultant procurement?
No, I mean,
We still need a contract, so.
Just
Pull
keep
up.
it as scoping and contractual work necessary to proceed with the parking lot project.
I'm happy to do whatever I mean, all I'm gonna do, the next thing I'm gonna do is bring it back. You know, I don't get too far off leash, right? So I will bring you back. The intention would be in a month to bring you back a conceptual design contract.
But should we put a number of dollars that we're using for ARPA funds dedicated?
I
to
would
this?
not.
You wouldn't, okay.
And the reason I wouldn't is because I might bring you back a contract that is you, for whatever reason, you're like, absolutely not. Or, I mean, there's no need to allocate the funds right now by allocating the time. I think the numbers are gonna shake out. And that's really why I wanna proceed with this, is that there's a lot of instability in this project. And where it's gonna shake out is gonna show us how much money we have left, and then we can decide, okay, we've got $30,000 left of ARPA money. We have $150,000 worth of projects. Where are we gonna pick to put all these projects together?
So
to
Michael,
move
that
forward?
satisfies your
I
question.
think so.
Yeah.
So it's not, because I would be really sad for the committee that I'm
Right.
liaison to, because I know how much work they've put into
Right.
it
Yeah.
for the well testing.
Well, I don't think we weren't committing to the.
No, I
we're
know,
gonna find the
nobody's
money from either. ARPA
torpedoed
or
any of these
non-ARPA
six.
funds.
No,
or
none of
identified
this,
projects.
no, I'm
That's
simply
where
saying,
my confusion is.
right, no, it's not saying that, it's saying that this project only gets more expensive, like literally, it feels like every minute we're sitting here.
Yeah,
And so trying to,
Inflation-
do it, I know, exactly, Mary.
Inflation has calmed down. It's not like it was.
so are we gonna talk again about ARPA funds then?
Oh,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
I think,
I'm-
Michael, I think
Yeah.
you're going to be like so tired of hearing the word ARPA that I mean, yeah, we're not spending any money today. We're moving forward to proceed on a project to
So I
consider
can
spending
still
money.
lobby with you.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
I'm always
Maybe we-
available
yeah.
for lobbying.
Okay, good.
All right, so.
All right,
everyone
so
okay
Right now,
with
we're
that?
Thank you.
moving ahead
Right.
with
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. We
Yeah.
want to fix the parking,
Conceptual
right?
Yeah.
pricing.
How we allocate the money.
But I need to be able to face these people in
Right.
a week or two. I've put my Zoom on blur.
We're not abandoning it.
All right,
All right.
so we have a motion, we have a second.
Okay, are you in favor?
But
That's
it was,
It's a friendly amendment. Are you okay with that
Yeah,
motion?
yeah.
You okay with that second?
I didn't second it,
Okay.
Mary seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. You're right. You're okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Wonderful. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, Matt. I hope
Thank
there's
you,
someplace,
everyone.
it was beautiful today though, so, you know, I was gonna say someplace warmer, nicer, but it was great. So it's raining here though. Have a good
All
evening.
right. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Where is my agenda? I have too many pieces of paper tonight. Okay.
Consent agenda.
Yep, we're gonna go back to, consent agenda. We can pull any of these items out if you want to, then they will be off the consent agenda. The first item is authorization to sign a letter of intent for the Volvo L90H loader. The period of permissive referendum passed, so we are free to proceed with this. The second one is to establish a pay rate for the recreation specialist. This is the position we had out to hire. It is in the budget. And the resolution blanks in that the town board would be approving a hire of Zach Kozlowski to fill the open recreation specialist position at a pay rate of $22 an hour for an average of 15 hours per week, beginning April 29th, not 24th. He was unanimously recommended by the committee from the Youth Commission, who conducted the interview process. And then the final one is the approval of a generic escrow agreement for professional services related to planning and zoning projects. The generic escrow agreement is very, very similar to the escrow agreement that the town board already approved for Grassroots. And by town law, Ulysses town law, we have the right to require that our applicants pay for required professional and legal fees associated with their projects. And this helps us streamline that process to ensure that those costs are being appropriately passed on. For instance, if there's a study required by the planning board for a development project, things like that nature. So those are the three items on the consent agenda. Is there any concern? Michael, you probably didn't hear this one, but we were able to find a wonderful hire for the recreation specialist. This person's going to be providing youth services. It's a budgeted position. It's Zach Kozlowski, who could start the 29th of April. So
Can you go over the escrow agreement again? I don't understand what it be used for.
So the escrow agreement, why don't we pull that out? So we can pull that out to discuss. Does anyone have any issues with the letter of intent on the loader or the recreation specialist resolution?
No,
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve those items under the consent agenda.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so the generic escrow agreement. So the situation where we found ourselves, which was my lesson in wanting to pass on costs appropriately to developers, related to when the CARS project was happening. Project we wanted to, going through the legal process, no problems there. But there was one meeting where we had our attorney present, our engineer present, to work with their attorney and their engineers and to all, or architect and have this meeting. And I'm just sitting there literally hearing the dollars ticking up. And how that should have happened from the start is that CARS should have been paying the bill for legal and engineering. And if you look back over history, the town has been paying for bills historically that should not be paid for. That law, and I can tell you which one it is. Ulysses Code 212-6, fees for permits. Actually, that part of the code specifies we are allowed to reasonably charge for reasonable services, for legal and professional services, consulting, engineering, that are necessary for a project to go through. What we're seeing is increased, I don't want to say that's necessarily we're seeing increased development pressure in Ulysses, but there are projects that the planning board, for instance, has wanted certain studies to be done in correlation to the Dollar General project.
Right.
It's perfectly reasonable for the planning board to want them as part of their review, and it's perfectly reasonable for the applicant to pay for them. So this generic escrow agreement, what it allows us to do is it has a boilerplate for the town to be able to share with
I got it,
applicants.
yeah.
And then you'll get every escrow agreement to approve.
I got it.
So, but this just gives us
Yeah.
that here it is, and we're not gonna spend, so we paid for the grassroots version and had Nate update it and do a little tweaking to improve it, and there you go.
All right,
So we're getting some good value for it.
I move the resolution.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Assume there wasn't any further discussion, so I hope I was not incorrect. That one. Okay, thank you. Okay. Fund balance policy. This was just, a quick, touch base. The, draft was provided. Blixie, are you joining us for this quick combo?
Well, I just had some friendly amendments to the draft that's for that.
Sounds great. Come on up.
So,
We are gonna come back and talk about this again. Is it in May we're coming back? When are we coming back, Lexi? We talked about coming, it's in May that we're coming back to discuss this again, right?
or hopefully for a final version, right?
Uh,
Michelle?
Yeah, the May 14th version, our hope is that if we can get questions answered, between now and then about this.
I'm not gonna be on the 14th, so. Maybe we're gonna make it on the 28th.
We can move it to the 28th. No problem. Thank you. So there's no resolution on the board packet tonight about this.
It's just the same as your draft, just in resolution format. Just changed.
No,
This is an amendment to what you received.
so all the crossed out stuff is changes.
So it's a track change document. The thing is that is also read from changes from the original policy. So, and the track changes are in red also, so I'm sorry. If they're slightly different red, just the way it
Sit
works.
there, look at them side by side.
And Michelle asked me to bring this to you from what she had originally sent. These are friendly amendments. They're just minor clarifications and adjustments to the language, and I don't know, and also a removal of one of the whereases, which I found to be confusing and unnecessary. So, and Michelle agreed. So I don't know if you, I mean, this is something Michelle drafted and the finance committee reviewed a couple of times in detail.
So what this does is give us a template. So if we're under a fund balance, we know to put it back, to put some more money in there. But this also gives us the opportunity, if we're 20% over on fund balance one year, we don't have to fund that the next year to make sure we're in line with the percentages. So we're not guessing, we're not choosing, we're actually honoring what these numbers, what these percentages are.
Sort of targeting.
Yeah.
This is, our fund balance is gonna be between these two
20 and
numbers.
30 or 25 and 35. And they're a little different for the different funds because some need a little more maybe, and some we thought could do with a little less.
And some sources of revenue are more, consistent than others, and so that's taken into account too.
Right.
So,
So we would
Fund
enter
balance.
into a slow correction.
Yeah,
Mhm.
oh, yeah. I mean, I think we're moving in that direction.
Already.
Already.
Yeah.
So I think within a year or two, we'll be able to get there.
Mhm.
Right, Michelle?
I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
I-
A year sounds really,
Short.
But
yeah,
two,
I think we're.
I think you could do it in
on a 3-year plan for this.
Yeah, and it does, the language does say on the third page that, when estimates are outside the ranges, the finance committee will develop a recommendation and bring it to the board to try if, we need to reach a target, and it might be a multi-year process. It probably will be. In any case, that's basically the intent of this, is not to make dramatic changes all of a sudden.
This is the budget season. Look, that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like August, September, say, okay, where are we now?
Right.
Adjusting your budget season.
yeah,
Well, I mean, like having this adopted before you start
right.
this year, it will inform the
Sure.
process that you're following.
So as we go into having a tentative budget, or sorry, before we go into preliminary budget, right? That's the first version, Michelle?
I was.
Okay, so it's the very first, like, the
Tentative.
super draft budget.
It's the tentative is the first
Okay.
budget.
So it'll help inform the tentative budget of what's getting paid for effectively out of new tax revenue versus what's getting paid for out of unappropriated fund balance.
Right.
And what's being offset, right? So having this will help. And I want to thank the finance committee, I see this as a reflection of the deep work that you have already done in other sections of how we budget in terms of revenue projections and different funds. And there's a much closer alignment of revenue and expenditures. It's getting better and better every year. And so it makes sense to look at our saving, effectively the town savings accounts in the same way. And that's what this is. And so, so the public, and we're all on the same page, where is the target range percentages coming from? Because I mean, Mary and I both asked, made me feel really good about that. I was tagging on to something Mary asked when we had the comptrollers come through. We were both asking about like how much, what percentage target range, and they wouldn't give me any. I don't think they gave you either. They kind of shuffled it off that it's different. Where are the ranges being generated from?
Our best guess as to what's reasonable.
Okay.
I'm
You
looking
think
at
about
historical data,
Okay.
Yeah,
that some funds are always over fund balance and some aren't. We're trying to, just looking at the,
but as
It-
far as what the target should be,
Yeah.
I think we were looking at how long could you operate if you had a sudden external change
Okay.
that you didn't anticipate, right? So 25% is going to give you a quarter of your
right.
appropriations.
So
That
that
would,
should tide you through.
whatever needs to happen theoretically.
Yeah, I would say that it's just a relative, it's relative to how the fund itself functions, which, there's notes in the right-hand column. You know, the ambulance fund, we know how we're using fund balance year after year with that. That's a really easy one, but in the A fund, the VA fund, there's so much activity that happens with there, and there's so many different sources of revenue. That having a more substantial fund balance makes sense because of the erraticness that can come from those revenue sources.
Right.
And, you know, the expenses that can happen.
Right.
As well.
So I think the areas in particular we talked about was where we had little or no control over what the revenue sources were.
So in the B and
Like
the
B,
DB,
for example, in DB.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there was an article in one of the town, Talk of the Town, you know, the AOT
Mhm.
thing about fund balance that somebody wrote and they're saying, and they were saying, you know, we don't, I think it was somebody from the controller's office, maybe. But they were saying that, you know, people ask all the time, what should our fund balance be? Well, you know, we can't really say, but let's say it's 20%. You know, so that was their example. So, you know, I think that's safe.
all they care about is that you have policy.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
actually,
exactly what they
about
said.
Having
A policy.
Yes,
policy.
it
They
was.
just want you to have
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah.
It depends on the volatility.
Yeah.
as
Right.
we're alluding to in those funds.
Yeah.
Right, right. Yep. So,
Yeah, I'm in favor of being on the high end in the B fund.
Mhm.
Michelle and I, the first mortgage tax payment came in, and
Right.
when we delved into that, the mortgage tax payment reflects last year from April to October of 2023. The payment we just got reflects April to October. And so that probably for last year was gonna be the best market year, right? Like that's when you sell your house, like as you can
Right.
see, when houses go, nobody wants to buy here in January for good reason. But you know, in April, May, June, that's when you're seeing houses move. So we can, you know, we might reasonably assume that that's gonna be our best mortgage payment, and it's not very high. Like, I mean, we're fine in our budget because we really underestimated, and that's what all the towns are doing. I talked to the other town supervisors and they're like, we just assume we're getting $25,000, and if we get 75, we're delighted, you know?
But then it came in right on what we thought.
It did, but
Last
that was
year.
for the year before.
Yeah.
That was for 2022, when interest rates were a lot lower. Yeah,
There was a statistic today that came out. 60% of homes are now cash. 8% cash.
wow.
With a smaller sample size. Fewer
Yeah.
homes are being sold, but the ones that are being
Yeah.
sold are cash.
Yeah.
Well, I would imagine because, you know, those interest rates
Yeah.
were much higher last year, that we might be looking at low.
Yeah,
And again, we're already over the mark of what we budgeted for.
right.
Well, we budgeted 30-ish and we got 39, so we've already hit our goal,
Right.
but we should not probably expect
Right.
a lot
Yeah, I
more.
wouldn't.
So good thing we budgeted low. Let's do it again next year for 2025. So keep that in mind.
I just have a small question related to, general policy writing. So, we refer to the finance committee in there, but that's just kind of a new committee that we've had over the past year or so.
Since 2022, it was formed.
But I'm just wondering if we want to have, are we always, this is kind of implying we're always gonna have a finance committee.
I see what you mean. You want to
Can
formalize
we
it?
just say like the town board or its designees will develop a recommendation? Or are we just assuming we're always going to have finance committee from here on out?
No, so the resolved is the town board. So it's just the whereas, it's just the explanatory
No,
language
I'm
is on the
looking at
finance.
Where are you?
Looking at the policy
so-
itself.
In the policy itself.
Yeah, where it says targets for unappropriated fund balance.
Well, we could say,
That committee formed the organizational meeting? No. I think I
It
can't
was,
remember.
wasn't it?
yeah, in 2022, yeah.
Have it.
No, but at this, what are we, 2024?
Yeah.
Organization.
Yeah, it's identified. Yeah, we have a formal
have-
committee.
then it is a-
So, well, so what we could do is, we could think about changing something in that sense, under this red section of targets. We could say, whereas when the fund balances are below the estimated percentage ranges, the town's finance committee or, so include something, or the town board.
Yeah, but it says develop a recommendation and bring it to the entire town board, so the town board
I would say
making a recommendation to itself.
Or-
a designated group of the town board if the finance committee doesn't exist. 'Cause
Yeah.
I would say that the work that would be required to do something like that is out, it's too much for the entire town board to do unless you want to do a retreat and have a half a day or more.
Liz just volunteered for that. I just want to point that out. I saw that look and she was excited.
Sure.
So I think we could modify it to give ourselves a gap, or give ourselves some flexibility.
Right.
The finance committee, that's a good one.
We can work on that.
Yeah. Well, let's do, so my recommendation would be that, let's see, we accept the tracked changes. If everybody feels generally comfortable with that, and that we bring that revised draft with this change to it. Back to the town board for further discussion on the 28th.
It's gonna be a resolution
Yeah.
2024 though.
28th of May.
One more change.
Yep, I think.
We don't wanna miss
have
Rich.
This document, I emailed it to you,
Yep.
right?
Thank you.
That's a good catch, Chris, so thank you, and Liz for the year. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, folks.
So brings us to Justice Court consolidation, consideration to hold a public hearing. For last meeting, I presented a potential direction to consolidate, to consider consolidation of the
Court.
court. And we have, did it not get printed in your packet? I thought we did. Oh, we do. There's a resolution in your packet. It's a standalone resolution. It would be to hold a public hearing. It is not required that we hold a public hearing, but I think it is important that we hold a public hearing. For the public who may be watching at 8:49, we currently have two very part-time justice positions in the town court, and the town board is considering scaling down to a single part-time position. Because you can only do consolidation between terms, and our second jurist, Justice Tom Slee, has indicated that when his term is up at the end of this year, he will not be, he's not running for office, so it's at the end of it's in a gap that we have. So what are people's thoughts?
Yeah, do it.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Michael?
Yeah, what is,
Have we gotten any, I think, didn't you put it in your newsletter that people could submit comments? And have we received any? I don't think we will.
What is
I mean-
dress about?
I've already spoken to him. He feels comfortable with it. The workload is, very manageable. And right now he's doing all the workload anyway. So,
Because the UDC had
Yeah.
Found
yeah,
somebody.
right, Yeah,
that sounded
great, but.
very qualified.
Yeah.
So I don't know what his long-term plans are. But
Who, dressers?
yeah,
well, he's, I think he's he's in a second of his term, because the terms are staggered. He's in the second year of his 4-year term. I've spoken to him. I've asked him to put together a memo to share his thoughts more publicly on his capacity to do it.
yeah, if he's good with it.
I can have that for the
It's just
meeting on the
that
14th.
backup.
Yeah.
Oh, I've definitely had those conversations. I can guarantee you, I would not come and start playing around with the town justice court without having talked to.
Do other towns, like,
Yeah, they're all-
if we're down to one and, you know, he has the flu or something? Do they?
Yeah.
They provide
Or a state.
Will they?
So what'll happen is if you have 2 justices and one has to, have kidney stone operation, right, is off. The state doesn't stand up anybody in the absence of that second justice, because you already have a justice who can act. If you have no justice because of, more than, yeah, right, I mean, if it's a situation with the flu, everything will probably just be rescheduled, because the anticipation with the flu is you're gonna be back in a week or 2, right? If it's gonna be a longer term medical issue and you have no judge, the state provides you one and they pay for it in the interim until you can get your ducks in a row and move on with whatever legal process is necessary. So that they serve as the backup. And then there have been times when there have been town courts who don't have a judge. So Judge Lee was actually serving in Enfield until they had a new election so he was serving in that position as well. So there's definitely a commitment on the state justice court's part to make sure that justice is happening.
They would cover for each other.
Right.
Yeah, good, okay.
So
And there's fewer cases.
Right.
there are fewer cases.
They went to a central
Bail.
something,
Reform.
right, no bail.
Well, bail reform is reducing revenue, and then cap court
Oh,
is handling all, the centralized process is allowing cases that are outside of regular business hours kind of thing to be handled there, and justices who serve in that are paid independently through that. So,
All right, let's move the resolution.
okay.
You have to change the date in there on the May 14th, May 28th.
You'd like to move it to the 28th
Yeah.
for the public hearing? Sure, that's
Oh, I
fine.
don't care.
No, I mean,
No, let's
I
do
would
the
pref-
14.
You want,
Do it on the 14th.
Let's get her
You get to
done.
mix it.
Okay.
would you like me to hold a vote though until the 28th?
No,
Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay. So if before that you have a mind change, please
Right.
let me know and we can talk. They'll want to bring your concerns to the board. Okay, so,
Did you move that?
Yeah.
My second.
Okay.
any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This calls for a following roll call.
No, you are absolutely correct. Thank you. I skip that one every time. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Olson.
Aye. Rich?
Oh, I wasn't following, what.
I don't think it matters.
Okay, Mr. Box,
Aye.
Ms. Bouchard,
Aye.
Ms. Weatherby.
I almost said.
Aye.
Right. And
Standard.
Mr. Goldberg.
Aye.
Thanks.
Okay.
It's almost 9 o'clock.
I know, we're working through, we're getting there.
Unlike Caitlin.
Yeah, really.
You
You're slipping.
I know I'm slipping, but I did so well last
you-
time.
You got a bonus point.
We had 2 presentations I'd like to throw out there. Anyway, proposed agricultural district, alterations. So I just wanted it came to my attention, Legislator Corman and I had a conversation, last Wednesday evening. And at the next, meeting, there's a meeting that's gonna be happening on the 7th of May, where the final determination is gonna be made regarding, the county has to adopt, alterations or additions, to the state, agricultural districts. And back in December, the planning board has gone through a review process of these, and I included in the board packet the full document that the county, is, proposed, or that Cornell Cooperative Extension is proposing. And there is one parcel, that is being proposed in Ag District 2. It's on, Teganic Boulevard, that is in the conservation zone. And it is being considered, as an addition, to the state, agricultural district. The planning board was opposed to it because it is in the conservation zone, although agriculture is listed as something you can do in the conservation zone. There's not a prohibition to agriculture. But Legislator Corman wanted to know if the town board had a position on this, before I wrote anything on a position on it. I wanted to bring it to your attention.
What are our, if we want to vote against it or put our nose in it, what are the remedies if, I mean, do we have, what are the remedies? Can we do that and win? Or does it,
There's no,
No, the planning board was opposed,
yeah, the planning board is opposed, but the state is not.
right, and we were.
well, it's not the state, it's the,
Yeah,
no, it's a
right,
county.
County.
The county, and they're just doing clean.
Right.
because-
Every 8 years, they go through.
Yeah, I
this
know,
review.
yeah, I was there.
Oh,
but-
yeah. right,
But
you
the
were
question
there.
is, if you don't want it, will the county honor it? We say we want this to remain.
I don't know, what-
They've already taken initial vote on it, and the votes are not their votes do not agree with what
What the plan,
the planning board.
yeah, we knew that, but we didn't. know-
So it's gonna pass.
So, but
No,
Well-
it was 3-2 coming out of the committee, the peak committee, and then it's going to the full legislature. So it
Okay.
didn't pass yet, that's what's the 7th.
Oh,
I kind of wish we had more time, because in my experience, the underlying zoning of an agricultural district is not overridden at all by an agricultural district. So this
Well-
will still be zoned conservation zone. The restrictions and all the setbacks requirements of that conservation zone will still apply unless the farmer or the property owner seeks an exemption from the ags and markets. It's not an automatic
That's not
override.
what they explained.
I know, but that's.
Right, Rich,
Uh,
we heard it different,
It seemed to me
yeah.
that they were saying that they could override. That once it's up to ag and markets, then that supersedes our zoning.
But that's not the
No,
case.
It's not automatic, they
that's
have to
not
appeal
my-
it.
They could have, but they
They
could.
could if it's unduly restrictive to the farmers unless there's a public health or safety concern, which in this case, I think we can make, depending on what the exemption or the waiver that the property owner might be looking for.
Okay, given that that's true, what is the advantage to the farmer being in the ag district then?
Protections against eminent domain. So like say a pipeline wants to come through, they can't automatically
Oh, do that.
take property. There are,
And their tax benefit.
that comes more into a play with agricultural assessment than
Right.
agricultural district. If you are in an agricultural district and there are zoning requirements that are unduly restrictive, so for the conservation zone, I do believe that we have farming allowed, but there are certain restrictions on how many buildings and so forth we can take. If they say they needed to have a building that exceeded 125,000 acre or square feet
Yeah,
for X, Y, and Z reasons, they could take that to the state and then the state would review it. It's not an automatic overrule.
okay, so.
But that's what I wish we had more time to clarify, because that's, I know when I'm looking at ag
yeah.
districts, we always look at the zoning first.
Because we
And
have,
there's,
yeah, just a real experience. We have somebody, somebody built a barn that well exceeded the 32 feet minimum.
yeah,
That's max.
Yeah, it's not supposed to
Maximum,
be
right.
an automatic, so
But that appeal, it would supersede our zoning.
it could, but
Right.
the state would look into whether it actually is an unreasonable burden. And there's case
There was
law
no
about whether
appeal
or not,
that
no,
we're
that's
aware
not this case, that would be something later. But this particular landowner elected to go in. They
Yeah.
requested addition of their property in. They are an organic farmer, from what I understand,
Right.
who actively farms their property. They are adjacent to other agricultural properties, so it would be a connection. It's not like an island that they're creating of an agricultural district on its own.
But there is no real barrier to them, and given how they want to farm. The zoning doesn't conflict with them at all, and so that's why that's one of the things.
Yeah.
That we took into consideration to begin with, because what we're worried about is the next owner. Right, without those constraints, and the conversation we had. with
I know,
the-
I watched the video, but that's not my experience.
I know,
So I wish there was like
yeah,
something else we could ask.
can we, I mean, is this, when are they voting?
They're voting on the 7th.
Right, which would be before our next meeting.
Right, but I mean, you could give me some broad direction of how you want me to proceed, and I can find information and you can speak to me directly about if you'd like me to advocate. I mean, I'm happy to stand up in advocacy. If that's what the board wants.
So the one other thing with being in an ag district is you'll have to, for any project that they do on their property, they have to fill out an agricultural data statement with the town. And anybody who does a project within 500 feet also has to apply and fill out that form to ensure that what a neighboring property is gonna do is not affecting the ag land. So there's
Yeah.
some additional reviews that the planning board will do.
It
But-
did, but what I'd say, I mean, actually, one of the things that kind of sealed it was a project that went on right next to our property where somebody built a barn that was out of the 32-foot maximum. And I know, because I talked to John, Niels, that there was no other, they had no need to do any other regulations, appeal for anything or anything like that. In fact, the only thing that permitting required was for the basement. You know, the floor plan of the facility. And that was it. So
And is that in the ag zone or the conservation zone?
it's not, it's in the ag zone.
Well, the ag zone, that would be, because ag can go up to what, 200,000, it's 20,000 square feet.
Square feet, but it's
There's
still,
a height limitation.
it still have the height limitation.
Cause this is just, so you have the municipal requirements, you have the zoning, and then the ag district is just another layer on top of the
But she's
zoning,
saying
but it's
that-
not
but it's
overrode,
It's not,
doesn't override it.
Well, I wonder if it's one of those things that you have to know to do it in order for it to happen. And I'm wondering if
I
that,
don't think, I mean, Niels. We had the conversation and agreed with our assessment that, and if somebody wanted to do something outside of the zoning for that particular zone, and they were in the ag district, they could do that.
then what good is
Yeah.
the zoning?
I don't,
What good is the zoning?
If you're in the ag district.
And a lot of the town is in the ag,
well,
And,
there's
and
different,
you
yeah,
say you're
yeah.
doing it for farming.
right?
That was the other thing. Even though they're not farming it now.
well, Liz showed me some documentation from a different presentation that
Erie County.
reflects, in what county was that?
Erie County.
In Erie County, that reflects what she presented. And then, but I reviewed what was presented to Tompkins County, and they're different.
Yeah.
And so finding out which is accurate probably should be clarified from a legal perspective.
Well, yeah, and
I think we should know because
Yeah.
like you
We
said,
should
our
know.
whole town is pretty much in an ag district. I mean, everything yellow is in the ag district too.
Then our zoning is irrelevant. That
Right.
doesn't make any sense.
So
Because we do get zoning violations, but you're
Yes.
saying
No,
if
you
it's a
have to be, you have to
farm,
say you're farming.
you're a
It
farmer.
has to be an act.
I'm here to tell you, ag and markets
Yeah.
controls pretty much
Right.
everything. So when people complain to me about farming happening, I have to say, well, that's in a lot of cases, then
Well, maybe we should change the zoning.
changing the zoning doesn't necessarily make a difference. Because of the ability to override for farming. We can control buildings otherwise, but,
What, could Ann help us with getting that clarification?
possibly,
But even so, you're not meeting to get, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so,
I mean, I can understand the concern and I don't wanna have any of the conservation zoning restrictions be overridden by an ag land. But I think if the property owner wanted to get in there, and it sounds like they're trying to be very proactive about all these other conservation easements and stuff that they're working on, I think it's good for them to do.
No, the planning board did not know that they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought it was being done kind of bureaucratically because this was this random spot.
Right.
Yeah, no, they
Yeah.
probably
You know,
elected.
They had, yeah, that they wanted it to happen, and now we're like, why?
So
Why is that?
I don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't wanna put this property owner,
How did you come across the property owner?
Yeah,
I reviewed the planning board meeting
Oh, and
and
then
then I looked up the property.
Okay.
It's like 62 acres.
Yeah, that's right.
62
It's the
acres, it's a lot of
Second
land.
Wind Organic Farm.
It's
I
great
believe.
that it's an organic farm.
yeah. Right.
And I think
They
they have
really have a
intentions, like with the grant that they got from the federal government, I think that has some pretty restrictive grant, like requirements of, I mean, they're only
Exactly.
baling hay once a year, not twice a year to ensure that there's habitat for different birds
It sounds
and bees
like
and
it's the kind
species
of
and stuff.
business you want.
I learned all this from
Right.
the
The
planning
trouble
board,
is-
I am not taking credit for any
Yeah,
of this.
but keep
That was
in
all of
mind,
them.
they're great, they are great.
Right, but you don't know, who-
Growers.
and what if they leave or?
Yeah, what if they sell it or?
Sell it to
yeah.
the next
Right.
people.
Yeah, to somebody who wants to build up.
reviewed every like 8 years.
Mhm.
But,
It is.
but because it's in the conservation zone, they still have to honor the buffers of the conservation. No,
That's my understanding, yes.
you would think they would have to.
Well.
I know that, but that's the.
But that's
conflict
the-
that
that's
we're-
the
that's
conflict.
the-
Yes.
that's
That
what
we
we
How
have.
do we
Clarify. Clarification.
I'm gonna
It's
talk to
been a
Nate.
long
I'm
time.
gonna talk to Nate and find out how we go about.
Well, and let Niels be in on the conversation so he knows.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Niels
Because
knows.
Mark should be on that too, because I think he's in the understanding that he doesn't have to either issue permits, correct me if I'm wrong.
Right, permits.
Permits,
Well, this, he did for the one example
No,
that I
it's
had, he did for the basement, or
but
the,
just the basement, but for the whole building, because if
But
somebody
then-
builds a building and then in 5 years decides they're gonna make it into something habitable. I think he ought to be inspecting it,
Yeah,
right? And I think he's under the understanding that if it's ag, and when I was down at the Association of Towns, I was talking to their legal staff. They said, oh, yeah, give us a call and we can help you through that. So if Nate calls them, because then it gets come up with other municipalities in the state.
yeah.
Sure, so I think having a clarity just at a base level of
Yeah.
understanding of when our zoning is applicable and what's the process for overriding our zoning. I mean, from a real estate development standpoint, I don't think the future risk to that property is another farm. I think the future risk in that
Just
area
develop.
is housing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not like when I was watching the county's presentation, I'm not worried about a CAFO moving there. Not because I'm not concerned about CAFOs in general, but
It would be a little impractical.
yeah, exactly. It would be impractical. That land is worth way more for subdivision of housing. And I think that's the more realistic future for this particular farm. I would love to see it operate as a farm under these wonderful conditions personally, as long as
but in the
possible.
conservation zone. It's 5 acre lots, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Isn't that right?
It's
The
approximately.
minimum
Yeah.
5 acre
5
lots
acre
to
lot.
subdivide.
Come on.
So I guess if we can get clarification and if it comes back that the underlying zoning does not get overridden by being in an ag district
Without
without any, just-
exception.
right, then I think I would be supportive of this going in, but I
Well, let's
wanna make
find
sure that the
out,
conservation district,
let's find out the way it works.
conservation zone stays in.
So two scenarios. One scenario, we find that what Linda understands to be correct, which is that our zoning doesn't matter effectively if it's for an ag purpose. if that's the result from what I discover, what would you like me to do? I'll write a letter on behalf of the town board discussed it, this is what we'd like to do. I'll write a letter in support of the planning board
Yeah,
and give some more justification.
Yeah.
Option one. Okay, if I find that, that's what we'll do. If I find that, Liz's, understanding from Erie County, that the underlying zoning can only be overridden by permission of Ag and Markets through an appeals process, what would you like me to do?
I don't trust Ag and Markets to give us, to honor the conservation zone. Give it-
It would be a process. They'd have to, like, it's a legal appeal process.
Yeah,
And it
Property
affects
owner
more
would
than just
have-
one property,
Yeah, it
like,
would
let's
have
be
to go
mindful, this
through.
is, this is more than one property. Is in agricultural use, and that's so.
conservation zone is 5 acres.
Yeah, so if they ever sold and they wanted to subdivide, they'd have to have them,
Is
so
there-
5 acres, they'd have to have all the
Is there
buffer
municipal water
setbacks.
there? No.
No, there's no municipal water.
I mean, ideally,
Yeah,
it'd be very hard to subdivide this.
Right.
But it's possible.
well, what does the planning board want to say?
Well, I wouldn't, I don't know, because given that, if you have some recourse, but have we ever experienced that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's never happened. That we're aware of, but I'm aware of anyway.
Well, I,
Somebody has tried to do something outside of zoning since we've had the conservation zone, but then. There's not that much building and construction going on down there anyway.
Right.
In the conservation zone.
and it's only,
just a fluke that this particular one has happened.
well, we're less than a decade into the conservation zone, I mean.
And
So,
it's pretty packed, I mean, in general, this is
Yeah.
an unusual.
exactly.
environment.
So if what comes back, and I can talk to AOT, I'll talk to legal. If it comes back and it seems to be more on the side of Liz's, I will do whatever the town board
I
wants.
think the ultimate, so you don't have to do all this work, will the county listen to our recommendation?
Our legislator
Yeah.
wants to know our position. I mean, will they ultimately vote in whatever favor we ask? I have no way of knowing that, but if I, I come from an advocacy background, I'm happy to go. Cheerlead, whatever I was never a cheerleader, unfortunately, because I'm not coordinated enough,
Right.
but, I'm happy to go advocate on our behalf,
Right.
and legislator Corman is also, but she would just like to know if there's a direction we'd like to go. And so if it is in the direction of, it seems like we have tools at our disposal that maybe we've never needed to wield before, but
Right.
now we know we can. Do you really want to fight to keep this out of the district,
Right.
of the agricultural district? I'd be less inclined to, if a property owner is doing what they're doing and personally asked, and it comes back for review every 8 years. That would be my thought, but I'm happy, if the rest of the board wants me to continue to advocate for exclusion under version 2, then I will do that also.
I mean, I would, under scenario 2, as long as we still have all our tools and the underlying zoning applies, I don't see the risk of putting this in the back district.
Oh,
How's everybody else feel? Or are you just really tired at 9:15, 14?
I mean, it's an organic farm. I'm not opposed to the organic farm.
Let it take us from.
We turned it down because we didn't, because we understood all of the zoning to be open.
Oh, okay.
All of
This barn could go to
Okay.
could go to 40 feet without.
So I guess if it's overridden, I'm under planning board.
Right, no, I understand.
Right,
right,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, now I have clear
Okay,
direction.
good.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I will let you know what happens, and I will figure something out before May 7th and let you know what I found out. Now,
All
thank
right.
you, I appreciate clear direction.
Yeah.
Okay,
Moving on.
moving on.
Question on upcoming events.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there training scheduled?
Yes, it is. It's just not on here because it's too far out. It is June 6th.
Half day?
June
Yeah.
6th is what?
Training
Thursday,
Training.
board training
For our requirement.
or staff training,
Staff
staff
Board
and board
trainings.
training.
Oh, it's
4
like
hours of
sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Ethics and.
Last year it was from 8 to
June
1.
6th?
June 6th. I'm trying to get it staggered, so we haven't finalized the timing, so I'll have that timing for you soon. But I've specified my my known appreciation if we did the required training at the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
So that people who have work to go to are not, because last year we did it from like 10 to 12 or something, or 11 to 1, and that's not convenient for most people who have regular jobs.
You're thinking half day.
Yeah, last year it was 8 to 1, but that included non-mandatory training too. I mean, mandatory training for staff, not necessarily mandatory training for everybody else.
Okay,
So, approval of minutes. We had minutes from our last meeting, which was the 9th of April, I believe, 8th or 9th. Yeah, I can't remember.
so moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It was from the 9th. Okay, I have no board notifications. And that brings us back to the privilege of the floor. We'll go in person and then, online, if there's anybody available. Is there, anybody in person who wishes to address the town board?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead with it.
Going back to the ARPA funds, just a suggestion, and I know there's probably lots of other considerations, but since you really like the other 6 projects, I mean, all 6 of the projects. Could you send out, well, because there's a lot of people, not just the water committee, but other people too, that work hard to try to qualify for the ARPA funds. I'm thinking that it would be good to give them to give everyone a sense that there's a total budget, all the projects are worthwhile. ARPA funds will go for some of it, but these are quality projects, and we plan on taking them into consideration in the 2025 budget year or something like that for funding. You know, without making a commitment. I know you don't really want to make a commitment for that money, but at least give everybody. And if there are excess, and throw in there that if there are excess ARPA funds, that it will go to the projects and that type of thing. Because I was sitting here thinking, I'd like to know what they're all worth. What's the total budget involved, then subtract the ARPA funds, how much do we have to budget for 2025 to complete these? If they're all worth projects, would be a good number to have available.
I just don't know what the parking lot yet's gonna really cost.
Yeah.
I know, you're gonna have to guess on that.
Yeah.
You're guessing on
No.
all of them,
Yeah.
because we don't have a lot of the details yet. Everybody's project could change too, in that,
Right.
within another year, so. Anyway,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Just a sec. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the town board? Anybody online? No? Anybody back in person? Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you guys for the discussion you had of the ARPA funds. I thought it was really good and really thorough, and the exercise we did with the water testing was helpful, and we were thinking, well, we'll just bring it to the board anyway, just propose it as a project if, it doesn't get approved here, because I think it's gonna fit really well with the drinking water protection plan, and there's a lot of interest that we're getting right now, and since you want to trim down your fund balances, and the B fund is obviously the largest, we think that can really help with that, and it's not gonna make that big of a dent, even with the comp plan.
What's the
So I-
largest percentage?
So
It's
I
not
think-
the largest money.
It's quite a lot of money, actually. It's plenty to do this,
Yeah.
plus the comp plan, plus still have way more than your 35%. So I think it's a win-win for us all. And I also wanted to say that for the clean energy program, I submitted some actions that are now pending approval, and once they're approved, we'll qualify for $60,000 in funds. And so once we find out about the approval, then we need to propose the projects, and we'll have 90 days to do that. So I don't know, it makes sense, obviously, to meet with Scott, because some of the things could be done over there, or with the finance committee, look at the long range plan, or whoever you think. A couple representatives of our committee, our task force there could meet with, because we have a bunch of ideas that we've talked through and that we've gotten from the coordinators. There's certain projects that they'll fund without much ado, and then there are other ones that if you propose something outside the list, then apparently it takes quite a lot longer until, months, 6 months, 9 months to review it. So, and one is 10,000 and one is 50. And so you could propose a combined project for 60 or one for 10 and one for 50. And the thing about the 10 and 50 is if it's under 50 or it's just like the 5,000 that we got before. You propose it, they approve it, and send you the $10,000. For the 50,000, now it's like this heat pump project was. You get some amount of it upfront, and then when you complete all the metrics, you get the rest of the town has to fund the intermediate. But if you have this project that can be completed pretty fast, then you're not really out for that long anyway. So those are things to take into account when we talk about it. So I'll let you know when we hear that we got the okay, but I mean, we should. And then we can talk about that. So that's
Wonderful.
That's what that.
Thank you so much.
I had a question, the comp, how are we doing? You interviewed some people?
We interviewed two people two firms last week. They're currently, well, we're waiting on the rating.
Mhm.
But we're gonna have a debrief Thursday at 5:30 for the board, because half the board was there in person and half the board, some of the committee wasn't there.
So they have to
But
watch
they
the
watched the
recording.
video because we recorded the entire
It's a
thing.
record.
Yeah. So we'll share notes and to get the rating with the hope that we're hoping and targeting May 14th, bringing a recommendation to the town board. Because the town board has to ultimately approve who we hire.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. And then we'll get rolling.
Right.
One other thing I was gonna say that goes into both the comp plan and the ARPA funds, well, those projects is, I think I said it before, but the stormwater plan, I think that there are ways we can get help and funding that would really offset some costs in town for that. And we did say when we made the grant application that we would do a flood management plan and a climate vulnerability assessment. So if we do those things as part of the comp plan, and we can get some help from the climate smart communities coordinator for that. Interacting with our consultant, then that will lower, out of that will come quite a bit of a stormwater management plan anyway. So, and I think there's money for that. So that one, you might not have to fund. I don't know how much the estimate is, but I think that one is one that we can make out.
Good.
With supplemental funds and things.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. We appreciate it. Great. Well then.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Michael, I'm sorry. You did raise your hand for something.
Are you guys students?
Yeah, they're high school students.
Well, do you have to give speeches to get credit?
Put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Very long.
Yes, you picked a long.
Me too.
This is for government.
Great. Awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here. I remember my government classes.
Now you can go, Mitch.
Okay, now we're gonna
Yes, students.
students of life.
All right, so.
Ever else, ever student.
You did. They moved and seconded it like
We do.
9:22.
You guys need